All right, Chancellor Green, appreciate you taking your time. Talk about Nebraska agriculture education with the university. I know it's an extremely busy time for you with the budget and everything that's going on campus. So once again, thanks for your time.
You bet.
So let's just get into it. Today, let's talk about the College of Agricultural Science and National Resources. It's vital to this university and the state. What are some ways Kasner helps prepare students to return to the farm?
Well, you know, the university has a long history in agriculture. You know, we're a land-grant university. We were founded to be the places that the daughters and sons of farmers and ranchers and the common man had an opportunity for education. That's still our mission, almost 150 years later. So ag has been a very central part of the university throughout its whole history. College of Agriculture originally, now a College of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources. It's diverse, right? So ag and natural resources encompasses a wide array of things, different majors, I think some 20 different majors plus in the college itself, in everything from, financial management, economics, agribusiness, through to animal science, agronomy, horticulture, entomology, plant sciences. You get the picture. It's wide breadth of everything that touches and has to do with ag. So through those courses of study, certainly we are able to prepare students who come here to return to production agriculture if that's where they choose to and want to participate in the agricultural system, all the way up through every other level of agribusiness or corporate business or ag banking and finance, all kinds of related fields that are there. So that education mission, certainly, in helping agriculture with students themselves, but equally importantly, I would say, creating innovation and technologies that move agriculture forward from the research work that is done as part of the agricultural experiment station in the college as well.
So since taking the chancellor's position, one of the first things you said is you want to get students in and out in 4 years, get an education, get a degree in 4 years. But how do you balance that goal with effectively preparing students to be successful after college on the farm?
Well, it's kind of interesting to me in our own data. So here within our own students at the University of Nebraska, if you look where the highest percentage of our students are that graduate in 4 years successfully and complete their degree from the time they enroll as freshmen, it's in actually the College of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources. So they have the highest rate by about 10% higher than any other part of the university in that completion rate. So it's possible, first of all, I would say, to do that. It is also important, though, that those students receive kind of experiential learning, right? So on-the-job training, so to speak, if you want to think about it that way, whether that's internships, externships, opportunities to work in the business. For those that come from production agriculture themselves, they grew up on a farm or a ranch or a working enterprise that's in the industry. It's a little different from those who don't come from that background or haven't had that same similar experience. So there's the molding of those two, where you have opportunities throughout the course of that coursework in the 4 years for those students that they do get that hands-on experience in those fields, and we provide that through a part of the curriculum that we have. Very few of the students in ag would complete their degrees without having done some level of internship or some level of work experience directly in the industry. And I think it's still accurate to say this. It's been a couple of years since I looked at the latest data in ag, but we were routinely running at the essentially 95% level of our students upon graduation having more than one career opportunity that was presented to them for them to go into the industry.
Now, some of the research I did talking with UNL Extension, they talk about 1980s. You talk about the land handover, if you will. Yeah. In the 1980s, they said the reason why we saw this average age of the farmer climb was because farmers and ag producers went bankrupt, and they told their youth, their sons, their daughters, not to come back. Yeah. look at it in today's perspective in 2018, which have some similarities yet some differences from the 1980s farming crisis, do you think that this trend may continue?
5 years ago, I was saying exactly the opposite. I was saying that I believe the long-term trend for agriculture and for production agriculture and the food system was bullish, because there was so much demand going to be there in the future to feed a growing world population. The breadbasket of the United States being a core central area that would be a area that's going to do that or contribute to that globally, and I still believe that. 5 years later, even in a down farm economy, currently, I absolutely believe that's right, that demand worldwide is going to drive it. But it is a very cyclical industry, very cyclical commodity industry, and we happen to be at a period of time that's another difficult time in agriculture.
So then how do you turn what you believe, you need to get back into farming, you need to return to the farm. As the chancellor in 2012 and you were the vice chancellor, how do you turn what you believe into actual education for the youth in the college?
Yes. I believe the opportunity is greater long-term than it's been in the past, is because what the demand is going to be out there longer term is going to become higher and higher, because the production is going to be more and more valuable, right? So take Nebraska. Biggest asset is land and water, right? And one of the reasons we're a breadbasket in the world is because of the water resources that we have here combined with the land we have, right? 2012, we had a drought, we still produced because we had water, because we could irrigate with that water, right? So if our asset is the ability to produce, and the demand is going to grow worldwide without growing asset resources, not more land, not more water, not more ability to produce from resources that you can deploy that you don't have now, your asset becomes more valuable long-term, right? But again, it's a long-term horizon that has to happen to make that happen. The person today that is a young person entering agriculture using that asset base, their long-term payoff in that business is 2050, is 2060. It's gradual, but it's long-term. So you have to be able to manage that long-term. That's the volatility of agriculture that people talk about. It's a high-risk business, so you have to be able to manage that volatility. You mentioned the 1980s and the current time. We're in a volatile time currently. The 1980s were a very different kind of volatile time that was one of those down times people had to be able to manage through to get to the next cycle.
So what is the university doing then to teach youth to understand it is a long-term, in your words, cylindrical and volatile time?
So if you want to be an agricultural producer, you want to go back and you want to run a farming enterprise, run a farming ranching enterprise, be at the production level. We have over the years realized that when I was an undergraduate agricultural student, I was an animal science student. I happened to choose to be a double major in ag economics when I was in school, but most animal science students didn't study economics, right? So if you were someone interested in the animal industries and you wanted to go back to be a beef producer or dairy producer or poultry producer, you didn't take necessarily traditionally very much coursework in financial management, in economic models, in ability to predict markets, and be able to manage your financial resources long term, that long term stuff I was talking about. So that's different now. So we encourage the students in their curriculum, especially if they're production oriented, they want to go back into the production industry, that they have a very strong working foundational knowledge of long-term asset management, of how you manage downturns in the market, how you predict those downturns in the market, equally as much as how well you're able to pull a calf, or whether you're able to manage the nutrition of a cow herd, right? On the animal science side or the animal husbandry side, it's equally as important about all of the other kind of what I call interdisciplinary aspects of being able to manage a business at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we've certainly seen that evolve over time.
So are there any programs the university has right now for students trying to get in that are helping students get started? Because we know high input costs for startup farmers are off the roofs for, just regular farmers, but more importantly, folks that are just trying to start out.
If you are a person that wants to get into the competitive marketplace in agriculture and do it at that size and scale, it's difficult. Right? So if you don't have that land asset and you're not starting from either a familial, family transfer of land, you're the daughter or the son coming home to be part of a already existing family operation or family corporation, it's difficult because land value, remember what I said, over time, land values go up. And we've seen dramatic increase in land values in the last decade. The technology intensity that is used to increase that size and scale is what drives that, right? So what one operator can now do with the technology that's deployed in agriculture and the precision with which you can deploy that technology is dramatically different than it was 5 years ago, much less 30 years ago, right? So it is a challenge. If you want to start, how do you start accumulating the asset base to be able to enter? So it's that. So now what you're seeing happen, and I think this is a little different than anything we've seen in the past in our history, is that average age of the farmer or rancher increasing, where they don't have a transfer plan forward to a family member. All right, so it was to a child or a grandchild that's going to come in and take over that operation. We're beginning to see new partnership arrangements occur where now you're a person that didn't grow up in production agriculture, but you become a buying in partner to an operation, right? So the university is helping people understand that, understand what those models look like. They're helping them understand how you go about the business analysis of those kinds of things.
Is that through programs? Is that through clubs? Is it through classes?
Primarily through classes. It's primarily through the information they would gain in classes. Nebraska Extension helps with that too, right? Where Extension is local, so they know the local people, know the local community. Often those farmers and ranchers are reaching out through Extension, trying to identify people that, I'm not going to say that's the case on every section of land that's out there in the state, but it's occurring more and more where we're seeing that kind of transfer of land happen. And then the other way land transfer is happening, probably the more common way to be really candid, is the operations are getting bigger. So as those operations grow in size and scale, as land becomes available, it's put into the larger scale operations at the same time.
So a big part of this university is East Campus, the agricultural side, versus the city campus side. And this university is 30% of the state's income. Now, Governor Ricketts has asked the university pay 13% of the budget shortfall, and this is a very hot topic this year. What challenge does what he's asking you guys to do present not only to the university, but specifically for ag students?
Yeah, we're a land-grant university. Yeah, as you mentioned, East Campus and all of the operations on ag throughout the state that we have in research and extension spread throughout the state of Nebraska is a big enterprise. The Institute of Ag and Natural Resources here makes up almost a third of the university's budget overall to deliver on that mission and be a world leader in that area. So we have to balance and look at how we deal with solving that budget problem. As we speak, I'm sitting here talking to you today. Yesterday we were in front of the Appropriations Committee of the legislature talking about how we solve this problem and talking about the university's budget cuts and the proposals for those budget cuts. Some of the kinds of things we'd have to look to resolve a problem like that for us at the level the governor's proposing include agricultural things. There is a research and extension center in northeast Nebraska that would be slotted to be closed, which is unfortunate. It's been there since the 1920s. It served people in that region of the state well, but we would have to pull back and use a larger research center in the Omaha, Lincoln area to serve those needs instead. So there are ramifications associated with that in balancing the priorities and the needs of the university.
What are these decisions like?
It's very hard to have to make decisions like that. And it's very hard to have to sit down in meetings like we had on Monday of this past week, just a few days ago, when we had to sit down with these groups who are potential closures as a result of budget cuts. We hope we don't have to do that. We hope we can resolve it without that. But if it comes down to that level of what's been proposed, that's what we'll have to do in order to make it work. It's very, very hard. The center I talked about in Northeast Nebraska, my successor, Dr. Boehm, who's now the INR Vice Chancellor, had to meet with all of those faculty and staff at that research center on Monday morning and tell them that we may have to consider, highly likely we have to consider closing this site. The family who donated that land to the university a number of years ago, the Haskell family, they feel very deeply about that. So it's very hard, very difficult. And the most important thing, beyond the immediate impact on the people involved, right, the people who are employees, people who are impacted by their work, is the fact that we're not going to be able to use that resource in the future. We're not going to be able to deliver ongoing results to the public from the use of that resource in the same way. That's the real loss long term. But it is what it is.
What other programs do you think that you plan to maybe make cuts on agricultural education side at the university?
So in this current phase, I mentioned the Northeast Research and Extension Lab near Norfolk. But the other is in the Rural Futures Institute. There has been a proposal that we would reduce the Rural Futures Institute, not eliminate it, but reduce its funding substantially. That's already happened once previously this past year, and there's another more significant cut that's proposed there. We're always looking at how we evolve the program and change the program strategically, how we're delivering the program. So we're always doing that, right? So changing or sunsetting this kind of program, adding this kind of program. We're doing that on a routine basis, and there's things like that we're doing now where we're considering ways of delivering things differently, but more from a contemporary evolution way. This is the way we should be doing it. This is the old way. This is the new way we should be doing it. But at this point, those are the cuts that we would have to consider. I hope we don't have to go further, because if we have to go further, we'll probably have to eliminate a couple of degree programs. I don't think we'll have to do that based on the signals that we're seeing now in the economy in particular. And probably some cuts in extension that we'll have to make across the state if we have to go deeper, longer term.
One of the other solutions to making up a budget shortfall, you and President Bounds have talked about raising tuition. Well, how can Nebraska's ag families send their children to college when they're struggling just in general to make ends meet, and now they send their children to the university and have to pay a higher tuition rate? How does that happen?
Yeah, certainly very sensitive to that issue. And I mentioned the budget hearing yesterday. We heard from a lot of students who came and expressed that concern about raising tuition. There's multiple ways to look at tuition and cost, right? So when cost reaches a point where it eliminates the ability for an individual to be able to pursue higher education, that's a problem, right? Especially in public education, where we in Nebraska have always valued access, the ability to come into education, the ability in the land grant mission that I mentioned earlier, access to education for the average person, right? From working class families, from middle class families, from all walks of life, so to speak. And so when we limit that access, we're going against our own values, right? That's just a matter of fact. So we don't want to do that. We want to try to keep our tuition at a level that prevents that from happening. We also have to exist in the marketplace, right? So we have to think about how we do that financially and in the marketplace to be able to offer the quality of the education that we want to stand for in what we do, right? We're, in relative terms in the Big Ten, still by far the lowest cost institution in the Big Ten. That's a relative term, right? So costs here are different than they might be in Ohio. They might be in Pennsylvania. They might be in Michigan. Populations are different here than they are there, right? We have fewer people here to support the university than you have in Michigan, so to speak. So we have to factor and weigh all of those things together. When you look at what happened 15 years ago, this is what we don't want to happen. 15 years ago, when we went through a budget crunch, the university raised its tuition by double-digit amounts for 4 years running, right? So it ended up with over a 40% increase in tuition over a relatively short period of time to address part of that budget gap that the state couldn't cover. So the taxes, if you will, got transferred, right? So tax dollars that came through the state that were supporting the university that weren't available, those taxes got transferred in the form of tuition on the, to the backs of the students and the families that were going through the educational system at the time. We made that point in our hearing yesterday. This is the number of students in each of the districts that will be impacted if you are forced to raise tuition by X amount. So we have to factor in, we can't let it limit our access, go against our values. So we can't raise tuition at a level that will exceed that and will drive people away from their ability to participate in the education system. And at the same time, we also have to figure out how to do it in a way that we don't have to eliminate the core things that stand for the quality of what we produce. So we have to balance that.
So today we talked a lot about a lot of the issues, not only in agriculture in general. We talked about some of the issues that the agriculture students and just students in general are facing on this university, and the issues, getting into it. We've also talked a lot about some of the benefits of what agriculture down the road looks like 30 to 40 years. All of this, of all the things, your passion is agriculture, ag economic, and beef genetics major. Yep. What is this like for you to see all of this, all of the struggles for the agriculture economy, the struggles for the university, and struggling students trying to get back into what their dream is, what your passion is? What is that like for you?
I don't ever like to see, I would love to be in the situation where all things were firing on all pistons and everything was straight up, right? Everybody relishes that, right? It's kind of like what I expect our football team to do from here on. All things are pointing up right now, right? You would love to be in that position with everything. That's not quite the way life works in general overall, and I think we all recognize that. In every case, before there's great opportunity, there's great challenge, right? I just will say that generally. I listened to a speech today. The Lincoln Chamber of Commerce had their kind of annual Chamber Day banquet today. And they brought in an outside speaker, an inspirational speaker who came in to talk about intergenerational differences, right? The baby boomers and the Gen Xers and the millennials and and so forth and so on. So it kind of laid out this time over history from World War II to now, talking about, in her case, she was referring to intergenerational differences in the workplace, right? The baby boomers are different than the Gen Xers, you get that, right? And she described it in a way I've never kind of heard it described before. She talked about how the baby boomers, I'm a tail ender baby boomer, I was born right in the end of the baby boomer time, she called it seasons. So the baby boomers were the spring season. The Gen Xers from the early 60s up through about 1980 were the summer season. And then the millennials are kind of in this, then the next generation was in was in the fall, and we're currently in winter, all right? And she said, you know, you think about in that cyclical kind of seasonal way back through our history, the last winter was the Depression. And the previous winter to that was the Civil War and Reconstruction. And the previous winter to that was the Revolutionary War, all right? I never thought about it that way. It was kind of compelling when she started describing about it and thinking about it that way. So when I go back to what I said about challenge and opportunity, right? In every kind of challenging time, we talked about the 1980s in agriculture. We talked about the current time in agriculture. There is challenge that you go through. You go through a time period of really reset and thinking about reset. That's kind of what she was referring to this winter as. It's a reset time in our history. And maybe in a lot of ways, it's a reset time. And then there's the spring that comes, right? The next season is the spring that comes, which she referred to as the baby boomer generation the last time, right? So there's that opportunity that's out there longer term. We talked about long term in the ag industry. I'm thinking long term in higher ed. I'm thinking long term in terms of the university, and long term in terms of what the opportunities are going to be in the lifetime of the students that we have being educated today at the University of Nebraska. And even though it feels like winter, I'm thinking about what those opportunities are out there in the future. I hope that makes sense. So it feels a little like winter right now. You know, you asked me how I feel about all this. Feels a little bit like winter, but I'm looking to spring, right? And thinking about where those opportunities are going to be in that next era and what they can be for us in the future. I hope that makes sense. So challenge, sure, we've got some challenges right now. We've got budget challenges. We've got the ag economy is picking itself up by the boots, pulling itself up by the bootstraps, so to speak. But I absolutely believe there's going to be great opportunity for a long time to come. That's what the exciting part is. Deal with the challenge, move to the opportunity.
Have anything else you'd like to add?
I wish, this will be kind of my closing point. I say to my kids all the time, all right, I'm 56 years old. I'm over 55, all right? So I'm going on 57 years old. And I wake up every morning thinking, wow, wouldn't it be really exciting to be a 20-year-old again and be thinking about, not because I want to go back and relive my life, but just thinking about what those opportunities are going to be. The world that we're living in now, there's a pile of good stuff about the world we're living in now, even though the winter feels a little bit that way right now. There's the things that you're going to see in your lifetime and the things that are going to change in students' lifetime today, I can't even begin to imagine, right? Just in the way technology is changing the world and the way that we have the opportunity for the world to be a better and better and better place for all of us. I mean, that is the way I think moving forward, you know, and I think it's just going to be a phenomenal future to consider.
All right, Chancellor Green, appreciate your time today.
You bet. Enjoyed it.